Moyles is with us this morning to try and make some sense of what happened over the weekend. You were in Croker yesterday for the Tyrone game.
I was.
Again, first half and second half, significant difference. Why the difference in Kerry's performance in the second half and the first half?
It's funny, it wasn't actually as obvious as, say, the difference in the Dublin Mayo game on Saturday, that they did anything majorly different. They were out very early after the halftime team talk, very early, like
before the refs.
So, yeah, before the refs, and they actually brought like one of the fitness guys come out with them and had them in a huddle, you know, just kind of warming up again and doing kind of sprints out, and then you could see them talking. But the one thing I observed, they looked quite relaxed at the same time. There wasn't any, you know, major angst. You know, they were quite. There was actually even a few smiles. I was kind of saying to themselves, okay, they don't look too bad here, because they were dire first half. Like, they really were dire first half.
Well, if you think back to Tyrone 3.5, 4 years ago, if you went down 4 points, then that could be the final score. Yeah. Tyrone might just try and keep possession and go, okay, this game's over now. We're going to bore everybody into submission. We don't care. That wasn't on the cards.
It's funny, it's a different Tyrone, and we'll get on to that in a while, but because they kick the ball an awful lot more into McShane. So they give you an opportunity to get the ball back now. You know, an awful lot more. And they persisted with that at a time when they really shouldn't have. They should have actually just taken the sting out of the game a bit, because McShane was going well, but as soon as they put Morley on him, they took Foley off, who I thought was a bit hung out to dry, but Morley played him in front big time. Like, he just said, listen, I'm going to cover out everything out in front. And of course, he won the first ball that came down out in front, which is always a good fill-up for a fella who gets switched on to a guy who's dangerous. But, so what did Kerry do different? First half, it was like they were literally, they were told on the bus coming in, you're playing Tyrone, right? Because they were getting the ball on the forward line. There was no real pace about it. There was no direct ball. There was no runners off the shoulder. It was guys getting it and kind of doing individual stuff. So a fella receiving a ball with his back to goal, taking a hop, turning into a man, and then bang, overturned, and away Tyrone went. There was no wit on their play at all. And they seemed... There was kind of two ways about it. Either A, they didn't really think about it, or B, they actually overthought it too much. Because if you looked, they were having some serious one-on-one battles. Like Tom O'Sullivan was all over Petey Hart, and he just decided, okay, we're taking Hart out of the game. Then there was a bit more matchups that were going on. Sludden was matched up. Paul Murphy did a job on him for a lot of the game. Then you had... Moran was trying to get free, but they kept dropping Kavanagh off Moran, and they put your man Michael Cassidy, who came on number 17, who came on as a sub, started the game, and he did a job on Moran. And they were trying to get Moran into the game, but they were really struggling to get Moran into the game. He was kind of caught between the 250s, and then any ball he was picking up very deep in his own full back line, and he couldn't kind of work it out. So his influence was completely gone. I think then as well, they tried to drop a man in front of McShane as a sweeper, and that completely didn't work because he was caught in no man's land. They used, what's the other midfielder's name?
Adrian Spillane.
Spillane came in, and he obviously doesn't really know how to play it, because what was happening was he was sitting in front of McShane, and then as Tyrone attacked, he actually ran out towards Tyrone. And then all Tyrone would do is would put it in over his head into McShane one-on-one with Foley. Yeah. Like, there's one point where you see him and he actually holds him off. He hands him off in the face and sticks it over with his right foot. So I just think they were caught between two stools majorly. They were caught overthinking Tyrone, I think. And they actually just didn't go out and play their own game. Now, the second half was then completely different, right from the get-go. They just backed themselves. They ran hard, they pressed right up on them. They decided, let's not worry about him, let's do our own damage, let's squeeze right up on Kavanagh, which they did, and they matched everyone up in the Tyrone defence up front for themselves, and all of a sudden they started to pass the ball. They just passed the move. Like, nice little passes out here, got on it, and then of course the right men started to come out in the loops. And once you have, like, the individual brilliance is the only reason I give them an opportunity against Dublin.
Clifford.
Like, they did 5 points in the first half yesterday, and if it was any other team bar Dublin in the country, it would have been 2. Really. Because Clifford kicked the score with his left foot out underneath the Cusack stand, which was as good as some of Mannion's on Saturday night. It was an unbelievable score. O'Shea kicked 2 off the ground, if you remember, on the Hogan stand side, 10 yards in from the sideline, good 45, 50 metres out, you know, coming across himself with the breeze pushing it against it. The breeze was kind of going across the pitch, and he just nailed both of them. Like three unbelievable scores. And they didn't really create a whole lot more after that. So Tyrone probably, I thought they were living on an edge. If Tyrone had got a goal, they could have easily been 110, 111.
Yeah.
And Kerry would have been 5 or 6. So it was a terrible first half performance. And if they come out with anything like that against Dublin, even for 5 or 10 minutes, they'll get blown away.
That's the thing, isn't it? What we saw on Saturday night is that the reason why we talk about the whole full 70 to 80 minute performance is that any blip whatsoever results in just a massacre.
Yeah.
That is just the thing. Any letting down of the guard, any sort of deviation from the game plan, any individual error really at this point, you're screwed against them. And like, I'd agree with you. It's not, like, I don't understand that though, the process of actually that idea that you come off the team bus and you realise you're playing Tyrone, because it did look like that. Like, why do you think that was?
I don't know. I actually think that they overthought it a bit too much. I think they were trying to kind of say, you know, Tyrone have changed. They've got McShane in the middle, so we have to get someone back. That's not really Kerry's way. Kerry don't truck with sweepers. You know, they worry. They say let's all match up ourselves.
There was another bit of analysis. At one stage, it was Paul Murphy who was in front of them, and it looked like they were obviously trying to do that thing that sometimes Dublin do, where it's not always Johnny Cooper. If Cooper gets caught out of position, somebody else drops back in. But he again was caught in complete no man's land, and
then he started getting on the ball a little bit more and was sensational.
Correct.
In the second half.
Yeah, correct.
Did he not go back to playing as a
sweeper in both halves actually at times, I thought.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
but actually what they did was in the second half much more. They found him with the ball when they were coming out, and they left him over. Well, you know, on the Cusack side, and they said just go. And he absolutely caused havoc up there, because what they did was they matched up. So Kavanagh would go back and sit in, and then everyone else matched up, and they left him as the extra man.
He played like a soccer wing back.
Correct.
At that stage, which was an extra man arriving in space, and
he carried hard.
Yeah.
You know, I just think they probably gave, which is fine. You know, they gave respect to Tyrone, but I'd say they kind of just gave too much respect to Tyrone, and they didn't back themselves enough. What was great for me was I said Tyrone last week, because I thought, you know, this young team, were they ready for the verbals and the physicals and everything else? And there was a bit of that in the first half. There was plenty, you know, after they won the ball off them, they were down at them.
Donegal actually had a harder edge, I thought, to be honest with you.
Big time. I agree with you. Tyrone disappointed me in that fact. And as soon as Kerry started turning the key, the Tyrone fellas, it was amazing. You know, it kind of reminded me, remember a couple of years ago when Kavanagh was roaring at them, shouting at them to get them going, and it was just like blank faces looking back at them. The All-Ireland final, was it last year, the year before? I think it was the year before that. I just kind of went, Jesus. And even at the end, there was 6 minutes of extra time. There was no real, you know,
urgency
at
all.
Like, I don't know if you won't have noticed this on the TV, but you may have seen it. There was a free given, but the kind of Tyrone lad kept playing, and it went over to Burns, and he gets the ball on the far side. The free is from over here on the holding stand side. He gets the ball on the far side and he bounces it, and like the free's already made, and he clips the ball over with his right foot, as if like it's the first couple of minutes of the match. And the ball goes behind the goal.
So they've wasted 25 seconds.
Yeah, instead of kicking the ball as quick as you can, or someone going, give me the ball back.
Yeah.
I'm kind of going like, does this guy realise that they need a goal here? There's like 2 minutes left.
So Mickey Hart said afterwards that he's got the same enthusiasm to come back next year. I don't know if that's an official, I'm coming back next year, but it wasn't, I'll have to go and think about that over the winter. And I'm not sure that the right thing for Tyrone football anymore is for Mickey to still be the manager at this stage. Like, that team has been his team for a long time. And last year they reached an All-Ireland final. This year they didn't look close to reaching it, even though they're in an All-Ireland semi-final against Kerry, up 3 points or 4 points at half-time.
Mara Trusted did an interview with him. I listened to it on the way home, and he sounded very much like, yeah, you know, it's a team in with progress. You know, we hope to get to an All-Ireland final, but we'll just have to maybe leave that for another day. And I was kind of going, wow, that is unbelievable. Unless he's doing the complete opposite, which most guys would do, which is, even if they were going to hang around, they would say, oh, I'll have to think about it. I think they need something fresh. I think you need something fresh. I think as a bunch of players, you just need something fresh. They've done a remarkable job. Conditioning-wise and all that, they're there. And honestly, I looked at them. Physically, they're bigger than Kerry. You know, all over the place. I know this mean height, but you know, legs, everything. You know, they look. But at the same time, then they started to look very heavy-legged in the second half. And I just felt that spark, that kind of manic enthusiasm just wasn't there in that second half. When the fight was really brought to them, they surrendered way too easily for me.
Which was the complete opposite of what made Tyrone great in the first decade of Mickey Hart's tenure. They always had that fight.
Yeah, and they had it at the start. Like, they swarmed Kerry a few times, and they were, you know, it was kind of reminiscent of the 2000s, you know, and they won the ball back, and they were definitely G'd up and da-da-da. But then, yeah, it went, and that's the most alarming thing for me. If I'm Mickey Hart, I'm kind of going, that's not something that we can solve on the training pitch. That's not something that we can solve by bringing in a new coach. That's something that's now inherent in this team, and I'm not able to get this out of them for whatever reason. And that's a worry for them.
You said there the individual brilliance is one of the reasons, is the reason why you might give Kerry a hope in the final. Owen was making the case that he thinks it would be pretty close man to man if you were to put the two teams side by side. I don't think it is that close. I think it's kind of more 12-3 and 11-4 in favour of Dublin at the minute. What do you think?
I think it's probably closer than that. I think again Mayo showed. So if you watch it, you analyse the Mayo Dublin game. I've watched it twice. Mayo did an awful lot right, a massive amount right from probably 10, 11, 12 okay, but definitely from midfield back. They did a massive amount right. They put Dublin under massive pressure. They turned them over on numerous occasions. They made fellas be very uncomfortable on the ball. They got their matchups correct with regard to certain guys like McCaffrey. They solved a lot of problems. You know, Scully was out of it first half. Kilkenny had a poor game first half. Howard was really the only one with Con O'Callaghan first half who was really stepping up.
We should just take a moment, because Brian Howard's footwork was like
phenomenal.
A wide receiver. He was doing ballet in the middle of the field.
He does that jink where he's looking like as if he's going to go right, and next thing he just cuts and he's just gone past you. And if you actually remember the Roscommon goal where he set Con O'Callaghan up, he gets that ball and he's looking like he's going to go. The Roscommon defence are drifting across. There's no one mind in the middle, and next thing he just cuts. The Roscommon guy comes to him and he just slips it to Con O'Callaghan, and Con O'Callaghan comes through and buries it. So he is phenomenal. And by the way, he was the real one who was they couldn't solve all the problems, Mayo, and he was the one who got him. I don't know who was on it. I don't know if Vaughan was on him, but I know Horan was realised we're in trouble here. Sorry for the thing that Mayo did show, okay, here's a bit of a blueprint on how you can get the matchups correct. What Horan, I'd say, was praying for at half-time was that we would keep it relatively tight for the first 10 minutes, maybe be behind by a point or two, so the scoreline would have come in, but we'd still be even Steven after about maybe 55 minutes on the clock, and then he can start to bring in McLaughlin and Andy Moore, because they definitely needed something more up front. Like, Carr's a good young lad, kicked a great point off of Simons, but really that's all he did. He flattered to deceive then. They'd no one who really, like, it was very hard on the defenders. They were doing an unbelievable amount of work, unbelievable amount of chasing and doubling up, and when they got the balls to the forwards, they didn't have that one or two guys. Cillian O'Connor was in and out. They really needed someone to just really punish Dublin for the amount of possession that they had. Because Dublin are so cool. Don't know if you remember, there was a 6, 7, 8 minute period around the 20-odd minute where Dublin turned over Tyrone, or Mayo turned over Dublin. It went back down, and then Cillian O'Connor gave a really stupid free away underneath the Hogan stand, a lazy tackle, and Dublin got the score. When he kind of just hit Cooper on the head.
His first booking,
yeah. But Dublin never do that. If you're in the arm wrestle, they never foul you. They never give you the easy out. You know, you have to earn your score, but you have to get it. And
that happened a couple of times. Was it Cohen did the same thing? They were hassling and harrying, and Scully was getting into a bit of trouble in the first half. And then eventually, when it looked like they were about to win the ball back, he gave away a stupid free.
Yeah.
And come on.
Yeah. And also, in that period, I don't know if you remember, but in that period, they kicked some really bad. Like, Aidan O'Shea kicked a terrible wide when he came through. All he had to do was clip it over the bar. Remember that one? And Cillian O'Connor then kicked another bad one where it bounced in front of Cluxton. You know, he kicked an unbelievable score then after that when he came in onto his right foot. But there was a couple of points there, a couple of chances where they really just need to get. And that is the thing. Like, but Kerry will get those. Kerry will. Like yesterday, I don't know what the efficiency of the shooting was in the first half, but they got scores where you kind of go, wow, most guys wouldn't get those.
They had 4 or 5 wides in the first half as well, didn't they? There was definitely, and at half time it was they were kicking under pressure, they weren't easy kicks, but like, you know, the Dubs aren't taking those kicks unless you're Paul Mannion, in which case.
Yeah.
So there's the full where's the wides? 8 in the first half. 8 in the whole game.
8 in the whole game.
And 6 for Tyrone. So I guess it's not bad scoring efficiency when you kick 118. Again, they're kicking 118 against
No, it's
Tyrone.
not bad. 113 second half, like for 35 minutes of football.
To wrap up the head-to-heads, I was making the point that Fenton is clearly ahead of Moran at this stage, even though Moran is really good. And that's how high Fenton is. He's like at an all-time great level midfielder at this stage. He's in the same conversation as Jack O'Shea and Mick O'Connell and Brian Mullins. He's like one of the greatest midfielders of all time.
Yeah, he certainly... The problem for Mayo at the start of the second half was, I think for the first 6 kickouts, they lost 5 of them. And they only won the other one by pure chance. They did get the ball down the far end. Again, they had opportunities which they didn't. They needed to lift the siege. They needed to face a kick out from Cluxton because they were just being pinned back completely. And again, the defence in the midfield. But Henley was looking around. You could see him. He was running out of options. They did this massive pressure where they got 11 or 12 players up in front, 4 across the front, 4 here, 4 there, and they're just kind of saying to you, like, find some space. It's very, very difficult. And I know. I think I heard you earlier on talking about Donegal. Patton is a keeper who can execute it. I think as good as Cluxton can execute. The most important man for the Kerry team will be the goalkeeper when that press comes, because it will come. Now it's quite a difficult press, because if you do get out of it, you have an unbelievable chance of getting a score at the far end, right? Because what happens is, if you load one side and kick into that area, it will bring about 6 to 7 players into that area, because you'll have 4. So there are a lot of players in that area, which means there's a massive amount of space in the rest of the field. If you can win that ball, and if you have Clifford or O'Shea in, that's danger time for Dublin. Yeah. So it's a high-risk strategy. Now, does Moran have the ability to get up over Fenton and do that? I think he does. I think he's very, very good in the air. Again, I just want to see a bit more from him. Sometimes, like the first half yesterday, he was passenger type. He was going around the field. He wasn't really, like, he needs to go in and dominate. He needs to say, don't go on anyone else. Don't go on Michael Darragh-Macaulay. Say, I'm taking Fenton and I'm going to dominate him. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do for this team.
And who wins? At the minute, who's the best player, do you think, of the two?
Fenton is. Because I think what Fenton does is he not only did he catch some unbelievable kickouts when they needed it, he broke ball, he was physical, he gets forward, he gets into areas where all of a sudden you're tracking and he's gone in behind you and he's available, and he very, 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 very rarely makes the wrong decision with the ball. Like, actually, I don't think I've actually seen him make a wrong decision with the ball. You know, whether it's kick pass, hand pass, shoot, you know, he knows his limitations, which are pretty... let's be honest.
He's planning them out, whatever they are. Yeah. Like, and I still think he can peak. Like, I think peak Fenton still has to happen. Whereas I think this is, I mean, maybe the peak was actually 2 years ago for David Moore. Maybe he's at that level now.
I think Kerry have to throw different things at him and at Dublin. You know, a lot of people, they've
had success with Brian Fenton in the past. Like, Jack Barry's best day in the Kerry jersey has been marking Brian Fenton. Jack Barry and Brian Fenton has been the most successful matchup we've ever seen on Brian Fenton. So they have that weaponry there, and I'm not always convinced Fenton's been great against Kerry. I think in actual fact he's actually struggled against Kerry more than he's struggled against any other team. It would be great to see that matchup, though. I'm just suspicious it's not going to happen.
It may not happen. And like, I mean, you might. The thing that and a lot of people reference it now, and football has become, you know, you used to think the 70 minutes was actually pretty short, but it's actually become quite long, because management teams have sussed out teams very quickly, and they've gone, okay, they're doing this, and because of the extra time at half time, they can really get into it and say, okay, they're setting up this way, we now know what we need to do. So actually, the main thing for a management team now coming out is you have to completely change it in the second half. You have to throw some new things at a team, and especially like Dublin. You can't let Dublin suss you out, you know, because they'll go, okay, we know exactly what they're going to do there. They're pushing into this way. Their kickouts are going into these areas, because they're getting so much, I'd say, analysis and data back for them. They have you worked out. You have to try some different things, and maybe, you know, there are those different things, because Sherlock came in yesterday. Sherwood, and he was absolutely brilliant yesterday. Like, I mean, so direct, you know, kind of stood up Tyrone a number of times, just went right at them down the spine. Obiugli actually got did that a couple of times, because in the first half he was lost. He was in this kind of, I don't know where I'm playing kind of area, and they carried hard. And I still believe you have to carry hard at that Dublin team. You have to go straight down the middle and carry hard into that area. And
maybe that was Mayo's intention in the second half. In the first half it was like, let's keep the ball, let's just tire Dublin out of it. I mean, I don't know if it was tiring out, but like when they don't have the ball they can't score. And it made some sense, Well,
I think the reason was they were working so hard to get the ball back. They realised we better keep a hold of this ball for a minute to get our breath back, and then we can impose our own game, because they knew the amount of work they were putting in to turn over the ball, which was savage. They had to keep a hold of it, because if they gave it away straight away, they would have been absolutely blown apart. And they did that well. The problem was, start of the second half, they just didn't get enough ball.
We talk about this situation. First of all, when you brought up the statistics there, 118 from Kerry yesterday, I don't think that's actually going to be good enough to beat Dublin. So I don't think 118 is going to be good enough to win the game. I think, as Michael Murphy said the other day, you need 20 points and probably a couple of goals as well, at least. But we glorify Kerry in terms of how great they are, in terms of a moment of brilliance from David Clifford and all that sort of stuff. And we sometimes get bogged down in the fact that Dublin's system is just so bloody good and they are such a machine. But Conor O'Callaghan and Paul Mannion, there's your argument, in terms of parity between the great forwards the next day. They're just as good. They have an ability to create something out of nothing as well. That really you're looking at a juggernaut that is, as we've seen, unstoppable.
I think the main question is, so again, you go back in the analysis of the Mayo Dublin game, and both Mannion and O'Callaghan's influence was lessened by the fact that Colm O'Boyle was managed to get to them. Okay, so O'Boyle managed to get to O'Callaghan a few times. Remember O'Callaghan's chance where he just kind of side-footed it at Henley? It was a weak shot. It was about 6 minutes in.
It was actually, I think it was 3 minutes in. It's really early in. And
it was a warning sign.
To be honest, he skins Lee Keegan. Takes him on, bounces the ball past him, skins him, and there's just there's a covering person helping out.
Correct.
Who almost as if you need a sweeper.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of go to yourself, if you're upstairs and you're into Horan's ear, you're saying, that's danger zone number one. We have to sort that out, because ultimately they didn't sort it out. Because if you watch the two goals that happen, O'Shea is the man who's tracking back. He sees the danger, he doesn't get back quick enough. O'Callaghan steps inside and he's kind of going, but Boyle was missing. And then for a lot of Mannion's scores, if you see, he stands up, Harrison stands him up, and Boyle is kind of there, but he never gets close enough to him, and he's able to come in. You have to have someone who's able to do that. You have to have a situation where you have someone who can double up.
And whose job it is. Okay, hold that thought, because we want to talk about that in a bit more. It's 27 minutes past 8 this morning. You're watching OTB AM. Anthony Moyles is with us. We're going to finish on this. Is this the end of the road for this Mayo side? Because we're getting to that point now. Have a look.
I remember standing in the press box after the 16 replay, and as we've had the conversation before with other journalists saying, they can never come back from this. How can he get up off the floor? And in 17 they came back and got up off the floor and came closest. It was probably their greatest display, because they put Dublin so close.
Yeah.
But the point is, and not just to get off Joe's piece for a second, is that I think it's easier to come back after the crushing disappointment of a 1-point All-Ireland final defeat than it is from yesterday. Yes, they had a feeling of finality about it. They are further away from Sam Maguire than they have been since probably 2011, when James Horan took over, and they'd lost to Longford in 2010. And I think, and there's an awful lot of end of era pieces. Eamon Sweeney is a good piece where he talks about Mayo saying that their legacy is not diminished by virtue of the fact that they didn't win the All Ireland. Now that's an interesting point. Is it or isn't it? Their legacy as a great sporting story isn't diminished, but as a great team,
it's not enhanced.
Yeah,
it's not diminished, but it's not enhanced either.
There is the feeling of an end of days about this. I think I was in James Horan's press conference yesterday, and he said, look, the team will change. There will be natural erosion. I'm paraphrasing him, that's what he said.
Yeah.
And there's guys who are 34, 35 who have put so much into this now that it would be hard to see them come back, because the Mayo thing might be another 3 years until... they're still in the top 2 or 3 teams in the country, but they were miles off Dublin yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. And we kind of talked about this a couple of months ago in the middle of the summer when they were really struggling. It just looked like this team is over, and the new Mayo team, which will be the infusion of the successful under-18 teams the last couple of years, plus the last few years of the guys who are in their 20s, and so Killian O'Connor's going to stay, Aidan O'Shea's going to stay, and they'll be mainstays of the team for the next while. but that slew of 30-somethings, Lee Keegan, you would imagine, will stay as well. They're going to have to go because it's not enough anymore. Like, that team isn't going to get you over the line. You need a new team now.
I don't think they were miles off Dublin. I thought they showed areas where Dublin can be got at, but I think ultimately that amount of work that they require to stay in the game and be ahead, and maybe even potentially be more. They needed to be 6 or 7 up at half time. They needed that because Dublin were always going to come with a blitz. Generally, it's the first 10 minutes of the second half. That's where they really put the squeeze on you. And Dublin also tire. They do. They're an immense team, but they do tire, and they tired a bit. Look, I mean, you look at the Mayo, so how many will they lose? They lose Higgins, they lose Moran, they will lose maybe Boyle, maybe the 2 O'Shea lads, potentially. It does rip the Hart. Vaughan will probably go. And not even a thing of, even if fellas don't put their hand up, there needs to be a bit of a clean out. But at the same interesting point, talking to Malachy Clerkin yesterday, the Mayo team that started and finished was younger than on average age than the Dublin team. So they did have a lot of young lads on the team. You know, they had a lot of young lads in that squad and on the pitch on Saturday. So I'd say he has already began the process, you know, and I'd say he has an eye on that anyway. I'd say Horan probably sat there and went, this is a bit of a bonus, to be honest. Like, I mean, if you go back to the start of the year, like,
you mean being a semi-final is a bonus?
I think so. Like, I mean,
I think they thought that there was one chance to get the band back together, to go Magnificent 7 it out and go, right, that was it. And we squeezed one out at the end.
But do you not think they got as far? Like, I mean, really?
It turns out, yes. I mean, I think that was never going to happen, but because that chance came 2 years ago. And
well, I was worried for them last week that they were going to get. I thought they were going to get a real hammer from Dublin.
And part of me feels like Dublin kind of stopped for a little while there in the second half as well. And went, okay, we're finished now, and the changes started to happen, and like, you know.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think Horan went in for one last chance, one last roll of the dice to see if we can do this thing, and maybe his eyes weren't set on a long-term project. So as soon as the game ended, I know he's absolutely made no sounds of it. As soon as the game ended, I was like, is that James Horan done? I think you both disagree. I think he's probably going to hang around, but I definitely thought that he was kind of like the managerial emblem of the old lads who are about to retire now. He was the one guy who might be able to rekindle something to get back to a level where they might challenge Dublin, and it just hasn't happened. Sport is cruel, and I thought that was that.
Yeah, I think he'll hang on. I think he'll hang on. I think he's got enough good stuff as well. Like, I mean, they've been decent now, you know, minor and under 20 levels, so he's going to pick and choose out of there. And I think with Ruan and Carr and a couple of other fellas like this, he has got going. And you know, he has actually started to unearth, albeit they weren't great last weekend, and you know, they're young and they're not used to that big game experience, but he's unearthed a couple more forwards that can hopefully start to step up.
Yeah, and they've got great underage talent coming through as well. Anthony, good stuff.
No bother, Ger.
Dublin by how many in the final, or is it too early?
It's too early. Let me settle on that for a while.
It's 8:33 this morning. You're watching OTB AM, or you're listening to us on OTB Sports Radio. The Go Loud app is the best place to do that at the moment. We've got Stephen Kelly in studio next, looking back at the first weekend of the Premier League season. We kicked off the season with 2 live commentaries yesterday. Stephen Doyle and Pat Nevin were at Newcastle against Arsenal. Nathan and Kevin Kilban called Manchester United 4, Chelsea 0. Here's Kevin and what Anthony Martial and Marcus Rashford can achieve this season.